Mark Carney went down to Washington, D.C. to meet with Donald Trump. How did this entire thing go? Lots of smiles, photos, and a whole bunch of knee pads. Was there any success in the trade negotiations? We're coming back home with nothing. Danielle Smith and David Eby's feud has erupted. Let's get into this report. I like this photo. Just wait for it. Globe and Mail, CBC, mainstream media are gonna tell Mark Carney, how did I do? You won, Mark Carney. You won everything. While Donald Trump's sitting there going, what tape did you watch? We're going to start things off with Donald Trump absolutely obliterates Mark Carney to his face. What does Mark Carney and the Liberal Party stand for? What is their ideology? Trump wanted to make sure the lefties know where they stand. At the very bottom, he says that if America continued on with open borders, men playing in women's sports, and the green agenda, America would cease to exist. Windmills lead to complete social collapse. And he says all this straight to Mark Carney's face. Everything Mark Carney stands for. He is Mr. Net Zero, and he is #1 woke.
But you know what? If I let this go, if we didn't win this election, if we had these people that were running, that were ruining our country, destroying our country with their open borders and men playing in women's sports and transgender from everybody and windmills all over the place. If we allowed that to go on for another couple of years, we would be, I'm not sure that we'd even have a country.
Free trade going forward.
Mr. President, how do you see this?
By the way, I'm not sure we would have even had a country. And now we have the most successful country in the world.
Straight to Mark Carney's face. Did you see Mark Carney? Let's actually zoom in on Mark Carney. Oh, you're going to love this one. Watch Donald Trump absolutely demolish Mark Carney's 8-month record compared to his 8-month record in 30 seconds flat. And Donald Trump finishes with, there's only one way to solve this problem. The 51st state. Oh, you're going to love Mark Carney's reaction. Let's go.
Now they're all moving back, you know, they're moving back. We have, right now, I was just telling Mark, we have 17 trillion, but it's really much higher. That was as of a couple of months ago. Yeah. We have over $17 trillion being invested now in the United States. As an example, Biden, he was the worst president we've ever had, but they had less than 1 trillion in 4 years. We have more than 17 trillion in 8 months. 8 months. And I think that number is going to be $22 trillion. There's never been anything like that in the history of the world for any country, not even close. You know, if you did 1 trillion in a year, that's pretty good. We're going to do over 20. And it's coming in with AI. It's coming in with auto plants. You know, we're building auto plants, a lot of auto plants in the U.S. It's coming in for a lot of reasons. It's coming in because of the fact, I think the November 5th election was a big factor, and I think the tariffs are a big factor. And again, we want Canada to do great, but you know, there's a point at which we also want the same business. We're competing for the same business. That's the problem. That's why I keep mentioning one way to solve that problem is a very easy way, but we're competing for the same business. Competing for the same business.
Oh man, look at that face. 51st state face. As if he's shocked. This meeting between Mark Carney and Donald Trump was over half an hour. Guess how many times Mark Carney spoke? Just 15 seconds worth. It was the Donald Trump show. And Trump made it very clear, tariffs are here to stay. Competition is over. And the only exit plan is that he sees is 51st-State. Carney went to negotiate, but what he got is domesticated like a dog. The only thing that I saw was a whole bunch of knee pads being handed out.
We're going to be talking about that with the Prime Minister. We'll be talking about tariffs. We'll be talking about a lot of that, but that's for a little bit later on. Let's acknowledge our great ambassador. Is he doing a good job?
He's doing a good job.
Otherwise, I'll get him out of there so fast.
In your opinion, why has Canada and the United States failed to reach an agreement up until now?
Well, it's a complicated agreement, more complicated maybe than any other agreement we have on trade, because, you know, we have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. You know, we have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada. And Mark feels the same way about here. The problem we have is that they want a car company and I want a car company, meaning the U.S. wants a car company. And they want steel and we want steel. And, you know, so in other countries, they're very far away. And there's no problem. You can compete and you can do. We don't like to compete because we sort of hurt each other when we compete. And so we have a natural conflict. It's a natural business conflict. Nothing wrong with it. And I think we've come a long way over the last few months, actually, in terms of that relationship. So when it comes to trade, the United States was always giving everything. They gave everything to Canada. They would, you know, let car companies leave here and go to Canada. But that hurts the United States. And, you know, other presidents didn't see that. They weren't business-oriented. They might have been good politicians in some cases, not in all cases. They were bad at both. But it's a very natural conflict, and it's something that we're working on.
Does Donald Trump look like a person that wants to negotiate a fair deal for Canada? The tariffs are here to stay. He wants to bring back manufacturing for auto. He wants to bring back steel and aluminum. Does this look like a man that's going to give this guy a bunch of concessions? He said the days of Canada benefiting from the relationship with the United States is officially over. But do you think Mark Carney cares? 91% of his assets are located in the United States. Only 0.5% is located in Canada. He wants the United States to do well. That's why Donald Trump wanted Mark Carney to become the Prime Minister of Canada, because it would just make it easier to turn Canada into the 51st state.
Are you willing today to offer some compromise to Canada, maybe on steel, on aluminum?
Well, we've made compromise, and we've made some compromise even on steel. But, you know, we have the same basic authority and the same basic, this could be also a little bit of a conflict with other countries all over the world on steel, because we want to make our own steel. We don't want to bring steel in for the most part, but we will bring it in, and we do bring it in. We continue to bring it in from Canada, but there is a tariff to pay. And I think that would be a normal thing to say, but we've come a long way. I think, Howard, we can truly say, do you want to make a comment on that?
Well, I think the opportunity to work together, and as you said, there's conflict. You know, why do we make cars in Canada? You've called that out, and you've addressed that. So there are places we should work together, and there are places that we have natural conflict.
It's a tough situation because we want to make our cars here. At the same time, we want Canada to do well making cars. So we're working on formulas, and I think we'll get there.
Canadians are.
Yeah, so you know, the steel and cars, we're not selling any of that to the United States unless there's a 50% tariff from steel and aluminum and a 25% tariff for our vehicles, making them not competitive.
Refusing to go to the U.S. The numbers are down like 23% in the first 7 months of the year. What do you say to Canadians that don't want to go to the U.S. now because of your 51st-State talk, because of the trade war, the tariffs?
Yeah.
And
Well,
fear
I understand that. Look, I understand
that.
that, and Americans don't want to buy cars that are made in Canada. You know, I mean, we have the same conflict. So there isn't. It's something that will get worked out. There's still great love between the two countries, but you know, American people want product here. They want to make it here. Detroit was emptied out and moved to Canada, moved to Mexico, moved to other places, not just Canada. And now they're all moving back, they're moving back.
You could tell by Donald Trump's speech that he's not going to back down on the tariffs. And it doesn't matter what Mark Carney does or says. He says this could all go away if you just become the 51st state. That's always been Donald Trump's plan all along. You know what's unfortunate for Canada? If we elected a conservative-led government by Pierre Poilievre, we'd already have the Northern Gateway pipeline started. We would be constructing it, and we would have the new policies in order to develop pipelines across this country. Nothing would be holding us back, making it so that we have leverage if we go see Donald Trump. But with these liberals, we have absolutely zero leverage. Here we have Donald Trump brag that he made Mark Carney extremely popular in Canada. And we all know why, because he wanted a liberal-led government.
Very much, everybody. It's an honor to have the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who I have made very popular. He's an extremely popular Prime Minister. And I'm very honored to do it because I liked him. Right from the beginning, I've liked him, and we've had a good relationship. We have some natural conflict, but we'll probably work that out. But we've had a very strong relationship, and your hosting of the various countries that showed up, that was a beautiful job you did, and I appreciate it very much. And Mark, it's an honor to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I may, you kindly hosted me and some of my colleagues a few months ago, and I said at the time, you are a transformative president. And since then, the transformation in the economy, unprecedented commitments of NATO partners to defense spending, peace from India, Pakistan through to Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror, and now, and I'm running out of time, but this is many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going. On this solemn day of commemoration of the October
51st state. Do you see that? And guess what? Where are all the knee pads? I see knee pads down there. They're all wearing knee pads. Transformational leadership, puffing him up. Is this what Elbows Up voted for? This? I thought he was elbows up. Now it's elbows gone. I have two photos taken at the exact same time. Here's Donald Trump and his team. Check out their faces. Now let's take a look at Mark Carney and Canada's team. What do you notice the difference between the two? Let's go back. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And here is the most shocking part of the entire meeting.
We are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get.
He just said we invest $500 billion into the United States and another $1 trillion in the next 5 years. Why can't we invest $1 trillion in Canada? Why are we investing $1 trillion in the United States? It's because Brookfield and all of the companies that this guy is invested in is in the United States. He's planning on bankrupting this country. And as I posted on my Twitter X account, Carney praises Trump, says Canada supports his efforts. Trump is the best at absolutely everything. Trump jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state. Looks like Carney's elbows are gone and his knee pads are on. Pierre Poilievre watched the meeting between Donald Trump and Mark Carney, and he was flabbergasted. Check him out in the House of Commons after Mark Carney's statement.
Mr. Speaker, all the hyperventilating in the world will not change the fact that the Prime Minister casually said in the Oval Office today, he bragged that $500 billion Canadian investment dollars have left for the states in the last 5 years, and then promised that $1 trillion more will leave in the next 5 years. Wow. That'll mean mines closing in Quebec and opening in Pennsylvania. It'll mean mills closing in BC and opening in Washington State, factories closing in Ontario and going to Michigan. Why is it that the Prime Minister sells out Canadian workers, Canadian jobs, and Canadian investments in the White House?
It's actually unbelievable. He straight up says it too. It's not like he was hiding anything. He just straight up said, looked at the camera, looked at Donald Trump and said, don't worry, we're going to give you $1 trillion. Well, it's official. Our dream team went down to Washington, D.C., and they've come back with the exact same amount of tariffs. There's no trade deal whatsoever, so they achieved nothing. Now that we look at this picture, it all makes sense. Now you got to take a look at Dominic LeBlanc recapping today's failures as a success. That's what the Liberals do. This was exactly what we wanted. We got exactly what we wanted. No trade deal, but we talked.
So we concluded what I think was a successful, positive, substantive conversation with President Trump on trade issues, on a number of other international issues. But the focus very much today, both in the Oval Office conversation and then again in the lunch in the cabinet room, was on the trading relationship.
Mike Lucatore with CTV News.
Hi, Mike.
Coming into this, it's been widely reported that the Canadian delegation was hoping for relief on steel tariffs, and it was widely reported and never denied by anybody in the government. So you're not getting that leaving here, and I'm trying to figure out how you can still say that you're happy, and how can you tell Canadians that you've come away from this with a win at all?
Busted. Because he did say they were going to come back with something, and they did mention specifically steel and aluminum. Now they look very bad.
I wouldn't purport to correct your question, Mike, but I think I said in the House of Commons yesterday that we don't have an expectation of a detailed deal today. So because some unnamed sources speculated, doesn't change our state of mind when we got here. We hope to make progress. We hope to find the president and his cabinet secretaries fully engaged, finding solutions on priority sectors quickly, steel, aluminum, and energy. We talked about strengthening the energy partnership with the United States. So that work was positive. That work, in our view, was effective, but totally take the premise of the question that people understandably want to see the results, and believe me, so do we. And we're going to continue that work, and we hope to have meetings perhaps as soon as later this evening and tomorrow in that regard as well.
What did you get from that? I heard a word salad and a whole bunch of nothing. What's funny is the last time was Mark Carney standing in this position. But Mark Carney was not in that position because I'm sure he was too embarrassed to speak to the cameras. And what's funny is when Mark Carney spoke in this exact same position, there was sirens in the background as well. What's going on in Washington, D.C.? Let's move on from Washington, D.C. What an embarrassment and disaster for Canada. We knew it was going to be an embarrassment, and we got absolutely nothing. The trade deal is still not even negotiated. Yeah, it was a whole bunch of nothing. Now, let's take a look. Today in the Parliament, there was a Director of Energy, Natural Resources and Environment speaking and says liberal emissions cap is a signal to investors not to put their money in Canada. Who's surprised? After I show you this, we're going to go to the David Eby and Danielle Smith eruption.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I see it on a regular basis. And I think the government's last 10 years of saying that the energy industry is bad and we need to transition away from those jobs has made a lot of teenagers and youth choose other careers because they've been told by government that this is a bad industry and something that it won't be here for their lifetime. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how some of the emissions cap policies, the policies surrounding overall anti-energy rules and regulations like the emissions cap and the shipping ban, how they are impacting investment and therefore new jobs in these sectors.
Well, great question. And you mentioned, Fort McMurray, and we all remember the heydays, especially if you're from out west, of the hiring and the jobs that came in that boom time between 2006 and 2014. And you could get a great job and you could support a family. You could have a great life. My uncle lives in Fort McMurray. And that has obviously declined. Part of it is just global commodity markets. We won't be naive and blame it all at the feet of certain policies, but certainly it means that Canada has to be more competitive right now in attracting that investment. Right now, global commodities are globally traded, and that means the capital will just go to whatever jurisdiction is going to get the best return on investment. In Canada, where we're, for example, the only oil exporting country that has put on an emissions cap or has threatened to put on emissions cap, that obviously is a signal to investors: don't put your money here. And we see it in mining and forestry and certain other sectors, similar conditions where this is just going to be a very highly expensive jurisdiction, an uncompetitive jurisdiction for return on investment, and the money goes elsewhere. Our resources are very valuable, but we have to allow capital to grow when it comes to Canada. And most of our policies and regulations have not allowed for that.
Why are the Liberals doing this to us? While the rest of the world is allowed to become rich, we are hurting ourselves. We are literally stopping development in this country. For what? What is the benefit? We represent 1.5% of total global emissions and have the second largest forest on planet Earth. Think about that. We are not doing this right. Before I show you David Eby, I have to show you this picture. I think Justin Trudeau shook a stronger handshake than Mark Carney. Jeez. Also, before I show you David Eby, Mark Carney has 777 people that he follows. This is one of the people he follows. This is the chief of PR for Antifa. What do you think? Should we be asking questions? This blows my mind. And for those of you that don't believe me, let's check this out. You go here, Rebecca Jones. Holy crap, this is unbelievable. And then if you check out following, boom, here he is. Mark Carney's following this person. Holy crap. All right, let's start off with Danielle Smith. Then we're going to go to David Eby.
You had some very, very, harsh words for him today. You called him un-Canadian in his opposition to this pipeline. Is that not going too far? Can't someone have an opinion that differs than yours on what economic growth looks like in this country and still very much be a Canadian?
Well, I would just ask you to look at his video, which I think stepped over the line. It is fine to disagree. I try to find ways in which we can find common ground, and we've got lots of common ground. We've worked together on trying to advance ammonia export. I support his LNG projects. We have biodiesel that is produced in our province that is destined for the BC market. And we've talked about interties and how we would be able to support each other on that. We have a difference of opinion on this, and I do think it's unconstitutional. It has been determined by the courts that these kinds of things, trade and commerce, as well as ports and interprovincial infrastructure are federal issues. And the reason for that is that we can't have a single parochial province blocking the aspirations of another. That's not how we were supposed to function as a country. So it is the very definition of what Canada is that we work together on these things. And so I was disappointed to hear his comments, but in the end, it's up to Mark Carney to make the decision on that. And so that's why I'm working with the Prime Minister.
And I do understand even characterizing what he said as unconstitutional because of your belief, and I think the Constitution backs it up, that this is federal jurisdiction. But calling him un-Canadian is a very specific way to describe someone who disagrees with you fundamentally on one issue around economic development. Why go that far, and what purpose does it serve?
Well, what's the whole point of why we're having the conversations that we are about tearing down internal trade barriers and finding new markets? It's because we're all facing a threat from our greatest friend and trading partner, the United States, and the instability he's created that Donald Trump has created in our relationship here. And so we have signed agreements, both among the Western premiers as well as among the national premiers, that will work together to develop economic corridors that include all of the above. It doesn't say we're going to include everything except the products produced in Alberta. And so I would say that the will of the people of Canada is that they want their leaders to work together to try to find those export markets. It's very obvious to me that the best opportunity that we have to find new markets is in Asia. And the way you get to Asia is you have to get your products to the west coast of British Columbia. And so that's the reason why we've identified that, along with those who are advising us, as the best opportunity for us to be able to develop those markets. And I would hope that he would agree and that he would work with us on it.
Do you think he's going to do that when you call him un-Canadian for presenting an opposition at this juncture?
You know, he began it, and I hope he dials his rhetoric back, because I'll be very frank about what I think of premiers who are trying to block other premiers from getting their products to market. So I would say that I think he went a little bit far yesterday. I hope he's regretting it. I know he's been ratioed quite badly on his video, which is a suggestion to me that he's not expressing the views of British Columbians. When we've done our own polling on this, we found that 75% of Canadians do want to see new pipeline access built. And there's only a couple of places that you can go when you're building new pipelines if you want to stay within Canada. One is to the East Coast, one is to the West Coast, and the West Coast just...
She's right. 75% of British Columbians want a pipeline because they know it's going to make us prosper. David Eby. He's only thinking about David Eby. And here's David Eby, but make sure you make it to the end, because that's where he goes on his unhinged rant.
Premier Eby, I'm sure you've seen at this point that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is in Ottawa this morning. She described your comments as un-Canadian and unconstitutional. What do you say to the concerns that the Premier has raised about your opposition to a potential pipeline to BC's coast being un-Canadian?
Well, you know, I think the big challenge here, and the challenge that I face as BC Premier, is British Columbia is poised to lead Canada into the new economy that we're all understanding is so crucial to create, one in which we're less dependent on the United States, one in which we're accessing world markets, one in which we're standing on our own 2 feet as a country. British Columbia is advancing more than $40 billion worth of projects, real projects with proponents, with financing that are reaching final investment decision. They're going to employ people, not just in every corner of British Columbia, but employ Canadians from across Canada. And 50,000 people helped to build LNG Canada Phase 1. They came from every corner of this country. And the net benefit of that export project, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history, delivered by our government, the net benefit of that flows to all Canadians and to British Columbians. And so that's our work. And a significant piece of the BC economy, a significant aspect of the social license we have to deliver major projects like that and projects that are coming, is the support of communities up and down our amazing coast here in British Columbia. And so if you want to put that goodwill at risk, if you want to threaten these projects and say, you know, we know that your goodwill and your support is dependent on a tanker ban, that the fishing grounds that you count on, the tourism you count on, the lifestyle that you enjoy as a coastal community member, that it's protected by the tanker ban. If we want to say we're going to get rid of that tanker ban and we're going to go after your way of life, let's at least make sure that the conversation is about a real project. Right now, the province of BC, the Premier of BC, is not a threat to the pipeline project of the Premier of Alberta, because there is no pipeline project. There is a public relations department. There is a Crown Corporation with $14 million. The only way currently that project is going forward is with tens of billions of dollars of public money. And if this is in fact another multi-billion-dollar federally funded Alberta project, then where is the multi-billion-dollar federally funded project in British Columbia? That is the question that I'm asking. And what is the opportunity cost of a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer-funded Alberta project compared to what we can deliver here in BC, what we can deliver in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, Newfoundland, the Territories? You show those premiers the opportunity to spend tens of billions of federal tax dollars, and what can they deliver? Give everybody a fair shot. It's not the Danielle Smith show, it's the Canadian team. And we all deserve the same opportunity for the same federal funding for our projects as she does for hers. That's not un-Canadian, that is fair, and there is nothing more Canadian than fairness. That is a core national value.
That's it for today's report. David Eby is getting more unhinged by the day. Danielle Smith is being polite. Yeah, he's getting ratioed. British Columbians have had enough with David Eby. He's in the way from BC. He's in the way for the rest of Canada. He's not looking out for the best interests of our province. He's running the province into a garbage pit. Our deficit spending is $12 billion this year. He's been running a massive deficit ever since he's been in charge. There's no plan to put things back on track. We shouldn't be taking any advice from David Eby. And what do you think about Mark Carney's trip to Washington, D.C.? Was it a success or a big disaster? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. I'll see you on the next report.